Hello, can you guys hear me? Hello? Yeah, for those who are in watching, can you guys say in the chat room if you guys are listening to me? Or at least hearing me, I should say. All right, cool. Um, Hello. Welcome to the mechanics and implementations of game controllers. Uh, I am an officer of UTD ASME, and we're proud to present this to you guys. All right. I think there is a little bit of latency on this, so that's a little bit weird to me. Alrighty. So, my name is Erasmo Garcia, as I just said. I'm the project chair for ASME. I'm a mechanical engineering student on my third year. My experience with games, I could say I play a lot of games. I don't really do the whole programming of games. This is not exactly my first experience with it. I've tried it before, but this is the first time I'm actually like going all out into game jam with a couple of friends and trying stuff out. And I really do like mechanics and electronics and all that stuff. So that's why I'm here to present the mechanics of game controllers and then kind of throw in a little bit of implementation to kind of supplement that knowledge. All right. So I do know Game Maker Studio 2, and that's why I'll be using it today to show my little demo, which I'll show like after the presentation. All right, so this is the Society of Mechanical Engineers. In case you guys didn't catch this on the original kind of opening ceremony. All right, so today we're going to be just kind of going over general information, controller input components, types of game controllers, and the input implementation for Game Maker Studio 2. Um, so let's talk about game mechanics, their importance to player engagement, and what it means. All right, so game mechanics, put simply, describe how players interact with the game and rules of other formal properties such as goals, player actions, and strategies and game states. So these could go from puzzles, fighting, shooting, specific move sets like crouching, climbing ladders, talking to AI. So game mechanics has a very long range of things it could be, but really we're focusing on actions today because we're looking at how to control a player. So player engagement. In terms of game design and how you want to make a game comfortable for a player, you got to think about how the inputs feel. How does is it physically possible to put in a certain input? Let's just say you were expecting someone to use a mouse and keyboard, and you wanted them to have their hands on WASD, but you also wanted them to very commonly be typing in P while holding the mouse. So it'll be very difficult for somebody who's on WASD to use that same hand to reach to P and still have control of WASD or the common side, I mean, the common left side of the computer in terms of what you might expect from PC gaming. Another important thing to consider with player engagement is the sensation. How does it feel to um, trigger certain actions? Does it feel good when you like are able to just slam your alt or something like that in a certain game? Or how can you portray um, like sensation through just simple like button clickings and uh, player sense and stuff like that? Also, ease of input is a very important thing. You got to make sure that someone is able to access all their utility possible. So now we're going to talk about input components. So this is going to be talking specifically about the basic components that build up about all gaming controls. So obviously we're going to start off with the button. It takes an on-hit response. there are tactical buttons and tactical triggers. So I'm going to be really using the PS4 controller as a kind of um, like as a I don't know, as a base, because I think they're really well designed. They are what I use for most games. But yeah, so obviously with a PlayStation controller, the triangle, square, circle, and X are going to be tactical buttons. You could press them, and they have a certain clickiness to them, and whatever. And the tactical trigger are going to be the R1 or R2, L2. They feel like triggers, and they have a totally different feel to them compared to maybe some of the other buttons. So some features that are important about buttons, in terms of games at least, is their tactical feedback or their clickiness. That's going to be as you press down on it, how much pressure are you putting to press down? And then on the up is going to be how quickly the button will jump back up. This is really important for games that require really quick responses. So, like, let's just say you were in a quick action scene and you had to mash A. You want to give that clear sensation of like mashing A is going to be working. So you want to have that A button to jump up as soon as you get up from the mashing. Also, the sound of the clicking, like the physical like button pressing, is a little bit important. It's more of an aesthetic kind of thing, but gamers are very aesthetic when it comes to simple stuff like this. So if you make a super loud button, it triggers more audio cues for you. Like, okay, I know I clicked that button. But it also has the adverse ability of making your opponent, if you're sitting near them, hear that you're clicking buttons. So those are some different little things. So the input types of buttons are hold on trigger, on press trigger, and on release. Hold is just a constant check to see if it's being pressed down. On press only checks if it's been when it's been pressed, it'll trigger, and on release it will only trigger when released. So they have their own uses. You could we'll talk about it later in the demo, but really those are the three major input types for buttons. All right, analog sticks. So analog sticks are very simple. They are two potentiometers which moderate voltage by um, using a variable resistor. And the analog stick takes advantage of two of these so that it can read the Y and X. So the way it does this is like you can see right here, this is one of the potentiometers and this is another one. And then it'll be always reading, this one will always be reading the X and Y, whereas this one's going to be reading the Z inputs. This is going to be reading X and this is going to be reading Y, let's just say. And it's doing it continuously, so no matter what angle you throw it, it'll have some idea of where it's at based on the values that these output. Um, so some of the features that are important for analog sticks is the grip. So the grip texture, how big the grip is. So if we're looking at a PlayStation 4 controller, we are looking at the analog sticks, and we kind of see that they're really standard. They're kind of short, not really all that big. But if we look at it like an arcade machine that has a much larger thing where you will grab onto it, that is a different type of analog stick, but it has a different effect. Um, so one thing to consider about analog sticks is that sometimes it's a good idea, not sometimes, most of the times it's a good idea to create a dead zone. Since these are potentiometers and it's based off of voltage, like an analog data type, it's important to kind of have a dead zone where if there's like some noise going on in the voltage, you have some room to not, uh, get some type of input from it. All right. So now looking at touchscreens, So touchscreens take on, they take on-screen input. So they're really used if you want to have uh, your player interact with what's on the screen. This is really only used for uh, mobile games, and I know that like the mouse and keyboard, or laptops, I should say, have a touchpad, and so do the PS4 controllers. But I would leave those more on the idea of what a mouse is versus what a touchscreen is, because touchscreens are really supposed to kind of fall into the category of take on-screen input. So there's uh, a couple of different types of touchscreens. The most important ones are resistive and capacitive. These are the most common types of touchscreens. How you will input them will be different, but that's a little bit far off of what this workshop aims to hit. Some considerations that you should take into effect when thinking about using touchscreens is just realize they're usually more delicate. Don't expect your players to be mashing on their screen or have a really rage-inducing game on with a touchscreen, because there's a good chance they're going to throw that across the room. But talking about considerations, let's look at depending on game type, we have to take some considerations. Uh, Controller sturdiness. If it's a very intense game, you gotta expect people to really be mashing buttons, really be using the analog sticks, even throwing the controls. Passion is a great thing in gaming, but sometimes people take it too far and mess up their controllers. When you're making a game controller, you gotta take that into consideration. Um, Another thing is tactical feedback. You want to make sure you engage player senses, so that way you're able to not only have physical, or the touch sensation of it, but to have a whole player engagement to it, to just kind of transcend and immerse them more into the game that you're playing. Um, Visual feedback, making sure that if you have a lot of inputs in your game, that you're able to clearly show what's going on depending on whatever inputs you're putting, so that the player doesn't always have to be looking down at their controller and then looking up to make sure it happened and then just being completely lost at all times. Player engagement, as always, should be very important. All right, so types of game controllers. So we have the gamepad. So some of the functions it has two analog sticks, two trigger buttons, four tactical buttons, and four directional buttons. I separated the four buttons and the four directional buttons because the directional buttons kind of never get associated with the button. I mean, with the four face buttons, but that is totally okay. It also has an attachment for modular input that was released, I think, earlier this year or late last year. I forgot exactly when it came out, but they came out with an attachment that you can put in, and that you could get new things to um, come in and out of there. Did the stream break? Let me check real quick. What is going on? Oh, everything looks good. Uh, okay, from current slide. And let me just check something real quick. Okay, I think it's just my secondary PC got disconnected. All right, some uh, so another thing is I forgot to change this. Yeah, the trackpad on the PS4 controller is a new thing PlayStation 4 or PlayStation is doing, and it adds a lot of control to games. But as it stands right now, there isn't a lot of games that use it to its fullest potential, because it is a little bit awkward since it's not an on-screen thing versus a little pad that you have to kind of guess where your pointer is going to end up on the screen. So yeah, there's that little issue. And the vibration. So vibration is a very nice way to get player feedback. You know, you did something wrong or something's happening when your control starts vibrating. It's also very um, I guess it has a certain level of shock factor to it. So games that work really well with gamepads are games like Monster Hunter or Call of Duty. I say Monster Hunter because it has a lot of inputs into it, but it kind of works very nicely around the gamepad controller. And in Call of Duty, it's kind of the set standard to be playing with a gamepad. Although on PC it's a little bit easier to aim, it's just a lot more classic to play with a gamepad. So those are some examples there. Here's a gamepad. It's by PlayStation 4, and you can see the different buttons and uh, analog sticks and all the different things. So when designing a game, you want to consider, okay, I have these buttons that do this. I have two triggers and two, I guess, other tactical buttons, a D-pad and two analog sticks, a touchpad and a share and options. So just knowing exactly what does what commonly um, in uh, in in like other games, like the PS4 controller is nothing new. It's very it's a standard piece of equipment for a console that you'll be designing for. So just knowing what other games do with it kind of helps you kind of know exactly what players expect of a controller input using these. All right. So some pros of the gamepad is that it's a jack of all trades. It has about all the input methods or input components in there. It fits well in the hand, so it's very ergonomic. It also has a combination of directional pad and analog sticks. This allows for incremental or continuous directional input. Um, and what I mean by that is that with the analog stick, you're going to be like if you push the analog stick to the right a little bit, it has a smaller input value versus if you pushed it all the way to the right, it would have a larger input value. But with a D-pad, you're going to have, okay, button was pressed, button was pressed, button was pressed. So it's more of a consistent, um, I guess, yeah, it's more consistent versus the analog stick is just continuous. Some of the cons is that since it is very standard, it has a very small amount of buttons compared to like a keyboard or other input devices. Yeah, it could feel limited, but game designers are really good about uh, controlling how limited it feels and thinking of fun ways of expanding it by like, oh, instead of just pressing X, now you're gonna press X plus square to throw in Street Fighter or something like that. Um, so another thing that's kind of hard is that since you're not using your whole hand to aim as you might with a mouse, it's a little bit harder to aim versus using only your thumbs, right? Like when you're using your thumbs, it has to be like it's something you have to learn to kind of aim with. So that's a small little con of the gamepads. So now we're moving over to mouse and keyboard. So we have the functions of 104 buttons. Typically, only the typewriter section and function section are used. So that's going to be really the center of the keyboard. Um, and it is pretty standard to use WASD versus directional buttons since it's a little bit easier for your left hand to be at that area and it has a lot more control over numbers, over the function keys, over control shift, and it gives the opportunity for the right hand to be on the mouse. So games work. I mean, games that work best with it. Let's just be honest. All of them do. Mouse and keyboard has a good way of just being able to work with all games. It does become kind of more difficult to kind of get used to like using all of them, but yeah, that is a thing. Um, so here are the mechanics. These are the sections I was saying, the typewriter section and the function keys versus cursor control or numeric pads. Another thing another thing to consider is the mouse. Gaming mice usually have the normal left and right buttons, but they also have the side buttons right here. Some even have a number pad over here, but it's pretty standard for gaming mice to have the left, right scroll and two buttons over here. That's a very simple and effective way of doing it. Yeah. All right. Some of the pros, it's very adaptable for all games. It expands gameplay out very widely. It's essential for computers to have a keyboard. So, you know, you're probably going to have one if you're going to be. I mean, your players are going to probably have one if you implement the game on computers. So, also they're relatively cheap compared to game pads because Xbox and PlayStation both cost about $60 for a gamepad by itself, whereas you can get a usable keyboard for about $20. So that's already a third of the price. Some of the cons, it has a slightly higher learning curve. Getting used to using WSD, having your pinky on control and shift, and then being able to use the numbers effectively, and then the FN buttons. It is a little bit more difficult, but once you get it, you can master any game. Uh, so it is also, I mean, it kind of goes to that second point where it's just difficult to access all the inputs. Um, just design the layout to be usable. Um, and there's too many keys. I don't know. All right, fight sticks. So fight sticks are what the arcade machine kind of feel. Uh, it's like the classic arcade machine. That's what I'll just say. So these are really used for fighters. They really don't have other applications in games, but you can use them. But yeah, they're really good with classic games and modern fighters. So here are some examples of fight sticks. So they can range from either having one button to 8 buttons. Currently, it's very standard to have 8 buttons. That way, you could just say, okay, uh, to your game system or whatever you're using, this is just a gamepad that's kind of it's fancy looking. So this is going to be the X. Oh wait, sorry. X square circle triangle R1 R2 L1 L2. So you've basically said, okay, this is a gamepad with only one analog stick, and that's effective enough for the computer to just map whatever inputs you have here into the gamepad inputs in case you have that. All right. So some of the pros, it's easy to use, built to last usually. It has a heavy amount of modularity, especially with the way they're used today. And it's kind of classic, so it's really nice to just have. Some of the cons, it's limited in 2 dimensions. So if we go back to the image, you can see that we only have an X and a Y component. You don't really have the other analog stick to look around an environment if you're trying to design something in 3D. So that's the only con about it. It really doesn't have the ability to look around because it doesn't have that second analog stick. And it also has a very limited amount of inputs. In reality, that's a kind of a good thing. Simple design is good design. So I don't know. So touchscreen has multi-directional input. It's good with not. Yeah. Yep. All right. So other kinds of controllers could be like this is like really like miscellaneous stuff. Like if we go to like Dave and Buster's or something like that, and we went to a racing game, it'll have a steering wheel, and though these controllers are just game specific, and they have weird mechanics to them. So like the steering wheel is going to be a rotary sensor that that measures the amount of degrees you turn it, and it also has a limit on one side and a limit on the other side, so that you're not just turning it around completely. So that's how those work. Uh, Rhythm pads, they're used for games like DDR or Pump It Up, and yeah, so they're just really weird things. There's so many different types of controllers you can use. But yeah, let's go ahead and start talking about GameMaker Studio 2 implementation. So how do you set up different input systems? Let's go right into that. All right, so uh, GameMaker Studio has the capability of reading 4 standard inputs and 9 additional slots for other devices. So um, there's a really weird thing about this. So standard depends on the operating system. So if you're hosting this game on a Mac, it will give it will give the first slot or the first index to the OS. So um, if you if you plug in a PlayStation controller or something like that, it'll start on the index 1 or on the index 2 or 3 versus using that first input. But if you're using a Windows operating system, it'll see only uh, Xbox controls as standard inputs. So it won't have that. So if you plug in a PlayStation control, it will start on index 4 instead of index 0. So we'll kind of have to take care of that problem later. Uh, all right, so we're looking at just keyboards right now. So keyboard inputs, we're going back to the button layout, and we're saying, all right, so you have the keyboard check pressed, and keyboard check release. So this is a hold trigger, this is a on press trigger, this is on release trigger. So you'll basically say, okay, I want you to check this certain key that it's being played. And basically, so all number and letter keys are going to have to be written in ODR. This is supposed to be lowercase, all lowercase ODR. This A has to be uppercase so that it knows it's the A key. And you could then, for all the other ones, so like Control, Shift, the function buttons and everything else is going to be under VK or virtual keys. So if you wanted to see all these things, if you go to GameMaker Studio, I'll just show you guys in the demo. That way you can see it. So gamepad input. So you see right here, this is from the documentation. All of these axes have already been given an input type. So if you wanted to just say, okay, I want to see the input of the gamepad stick. Well, let's just say, okay, um, let's type in GP underscore stick L for the left stick or the right stick. But if you only want to see the values of the horizontal and vertical, then you'd say axis RV. That it's kind of good to use the split ones, so that way you don't have to consider like you don't have to make movement based on it'll make sense later. So these are the face buttons. These are pad buttons, and these are shoulders and shoulder Bs. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and open up Game Maker Studio. All right, I'm actually going to check real quick to make sure the stream's working because yes, excellent condition. All right. So we're going to start off with a new project. So I'm just going to start off new. I'm going to be using GML, and I don't really care what it's called. We'll just call it controller workshop. Also, if I suck at typing, please don't make fun of me, guys. I don't need that in my life. Let's see. Okay, it's just not working. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start off with making a little simple top-down maze. So I'm going to just quickly go over how to do that on GameMaker Studio in case you guys don't know exactly how this program works. It's super easy. So here I'm going to just make a character, but instead of trying to design a whole character in front of you guys, I'm just going to give him a color. I'll make him orange, and I will quickly just draw little eyes here. Don't make fun of my art. I'm an engineering student, and I do not do this for a living. All right, awesome. Okay, it's a little pumpkin. Smaller. All right, here we go. That's our little pumpkin. All right, and then we're gonna go over here. So there's different naming conventions. The one I like to use is just using a letter to represent what it is and then capitalize its name. So this is S for sprite, player. So that is our player, and our sprites are over here. I'm going to just make sure that the collision masking is done right. I want to do it manually. I want to set that all the way over there. And then I'll just go back to automatic because it doesn't matter. And then I'm going to get the center and make sure that it goes to the middle center right here. So I just did that by clicking over here, going down to middle center and moving that. All right. And this collision masking just kind of makes uh, it makes a mask over it for me to know when it's getting hit by something. All right, cool. Now we're going to just duplicate this real quick. Duplicate. And instead of doing that, we're going to do S wall. So we're going to make the walls now. So making sure that we're editing it. We see S wall here. All right. I'm going to edit the image and just change it up real quick. Going to make these walls. That works. All right. So I'm going to fill in here. All right, cool. And I'm going to make these kind of brick patterns by just simply getting these lines coming straight. All right. Ooh. All right. All right. Okay. And I'm sorry if I get quiet here. I'm not that great at drawing, so obviously nervous. Ah, I messed that up. Well, that's okay. Okay. Something like that. And then here we go. There we go. A little brick pattern, kind of like the Mario block. All right. And there we go. And after making our little sprites, let's also make objects for each of those. So create object, and I'll make a second one just because I know I'm going to do that. Create object. All right, and let's go ahead and edit these objects. So I'm going to use the naming convention of O for object, player. So that's our player object, and this will be our wall object. So O wall. Now I'm going to get our sprite of the player right there, and I'll throw in the sprite for the wall here. Awesome. So there we go. We have our objects. Now GameMaker Studio usually gives you an automatic room. So we're going to double click that to open it up. And all right, this is what we will see. All right. I'm just going to make sure that I kind of zoom out so I can see exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to create a new layer here by just clicking create new instance layer. And I'm going to call this one player. Oop, come on. There we go. I was naming something else. I do that simply by just clicking on it and then clicking F2 to rename. So player layer, I'll just call it player. I'm gonna click that. And it says I'll call this environment. Environment. It's probably spelled right. I don't know. All right, so I'm gonna first build my environment. So I'm going to select it so that I know it's in there. I'm gonna click on the wall object, and now if I click Alt, it will let me to just click and drag them. So I will quickly make something right here. Oop, that was a mistake. And don't come to me for map design, obviously, because not that great at it. But there we go. And then I'll just make a little maze of some sort. This is just so that we can test out the player moving and stuff like that. Okay. And I'll just draw something like this and give him some open area over there. All right, cool. So now I'm going to draw in our player by going to the player layer and just dragging and dropping the player into this open area. So he needs to find his way out, which it's over here. We can see that easily because of that. And I'm just going to clean up my work real quick by just deleting what I don't need. Yeah, that one's fine. That one's fine. Okay, cool. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and start making some stuff for the player. All right, so I'm going to go to the player object. I'm going to add an event. I'm going to go to create. This is going to be basically like if you want to initialize any variables, once the player is created into the game, this is where you do it. It's a good practice to use a create to just kind of have an easy place to find, oh, if I want to change something. Yeah. So I'm going to use hor for horizontal is equal to 0. So currently he's not moving in the horizontal, and currently he's not moving in the vertical, ver. I will say player speed, so p speed, is going to equal to 5. And I'm trying to think right now. I think that's all I'm going to be using for them, for now at least. I'm going to, all right, create a step. All right. And I'll be using a keyboard for now. So I'm going to say hor is equal to keyboard underscore check key. Yep. And I'm going to use the WASD. So ordinary open W. Oh, we're talking about verticals. Oops. A or D minus, and I'm just going to copy this real quick because I'll be using it a lot right here. All right, so that's going to be our horizontal check is going to be D minus A. The reason why is this is going to be our right here, right? So this is right minus left. What that does is if you get it, if you press A and D at the same time, it's going to equal to 0. So just know that going right is positive, left is negative. So yeah, or these don't really matter. Okay, so yes, vertical is equal to, this is going to be keyboard check. Oop, I already got those copied. So let me just go ahead and minus that. All right, so to go up is negative and to go down is positive. So let's go ahead and set S minus W. All right, and then we're going to say X is equal to X plus hor times the player speed, so P speed. All right, and Y is equal to Y plus ver times P speed. All right. Alrighty, and if we run this right now, I hope it works the way I remember. Just give it a second. There we go. So right now we are able to move around using WASD freely as possible. But if I try moving over things, don't really have any collision checking or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and ignore that for now. And now I'm going to show you a better way of organizing this. So if I wanted to start adding the gamepad stuff, I would have to kind of enclose this in here and say, okay, that and something else. I don't know. I'll just kind of do that, right? So, or that or, sorry. It's going to be one or the other. That or that. And it's not going to be that pretty. You'll just keep getting longer with all the inputs you're going to be doing. So instead of doing that, let's go ahead and break this down into parts instead and create a new object. So create, why is that happening? There it is. Create a new object. We're just going to call it MK for mouse and keyboard, and create a new object for gamepads. GP, gamepad. All right, so, let me open up my little cheat notes. All right, so we're going to essentially do the same thing. We're going to create right here, and we need the variables, the horizontal variables. We're going to initialize them to 0. 0. Okay, and vertical is equal to 0. Let me actually see if you guys are asking me things. Oh, that sucks. I had everything set up so that I could read if you guys were talking to me, but then my second computer messed up. Give me a second to check out that. Okay. Okay, there we go. I could see you guys. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat, and I'll go ahead and answer any questions. All right, so right there, we created the horizontal and vertical options right there, variables. And now let's go ahead and do a begin step. So this is going to be at the beginning of a step execution. So we're going to only be looking for the same thing over here. So we'll actually remove this part right here and throw it over here. All right. And I don't only want these to be like that. So let's also include the the arrow keys. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. Copy. Paste this right here. Get this, instead of being those, we're going to have to do VK right minus VK left. Oop. Let's actually give ourselves some more space by opening this up over here. All right, so now we have to get this to VK left. VK underscore left. Right there. Okay, so now we're checking D minus A, or right minus left. So that way we have both we have both WASD and left and right now. All right, let's go ahead and copy all of this. Copy, throw you guys into here. We're going to change this to down minus up. Minus up. All right, so now we have WASD and the directional pads on the keyboard. This one's still saying some sort of an error. Oops. It's not really important to throw in these semicolons, but semicolons help just organize things a little bit better. So I think this one doesn't need to be there. There we go. Okay. Now I need to figure out what's going on here. I think that was it. Yeah. And oh wait, no, yeah, they are there. What the heck? They're not here. There you go. Where am I getting this error? Got expected a close. Huh, I guess I need another close. Right. You open and close there. You open and close that one. Okay. Open. Okay. Makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Unexpected syntax. Here we go. There we go. Now we finally got everything working. All right, cool. So that's going to be for the um, for those. This is going to be all we need to write for the keyboard. If we want to kind of make this nicer, actually, and a little bit easier to read instead of having all these big lines over here, what we can do is just come over here and do var, or a temporary variable, key up is going to equal keyboard. Let's just get the up imports over here. So it's going to equal this, or this over here. Or just this right here. So the reason why I'm doing it like this is if I wanted to keep adding different up variables from the keyboard, like let's just say I wanted WASD, the directional pads, and the number pads to have three different, all have a control. So that way, for some reason, I can get 3 players in there or something like that. I could add that by just kind of adding more up keys and stuff like that. Now I'm going to close this off here, copy, and then I'm going to just kind of create the 4 directions right here. I'm going to make up, down, left, right. All right, and then I'm just going to change this to their associator ones. WASD, VK, down, VK, left, and VK right. All right, awesome. And now we should see that these have an error. Right here. All right. So now we're just getting warnings saying that, oh, these have only been used once. So let's go ahead and start using them. So now we want to rewrite these statements over here using these over here, right? So horizontal is going to equal key left minus key right. All right, and then this is going to be the vertical input of key down minus key up. So now we've essentially rewritten both of these, but kind of condensed them down to this nice little statement right here. Alrighty, so let's go back to our player object by just simply double clicking it. And now in the create, let's go ahead and create a new object. So we're going to call it MK for the keyboard. Ooh, actually these, let's go ahead and give the naming constraint. So O gamepad. I'm actually going to give these the proper naming conventions, and O keyboard. So that way I know those are the objects for those items. Now I'm going to go back to the key player and say MK, or the variable or object variable I'll be using is going to be an instance uh, create depth. It doesn't really matter what you do for these, since these are just going to be inserting the objects into the game, so that way you're able to use them in code. So we're just going to give it the position 0, 0, 0, and the object is going to be keyboard, right? All right. Okay, and I will also do that real quickly with my gamepad. Instance underscore create depth 0, 0, 0, O gamepad. All right. Now, over here, if I'm going to quickly erase that because that's not the best way to write it. Now we're going to be looking at, we saw how to use var. So var hmove, right? So this is a horizontal movement. It's going to equal mk dot hor. Wait a minute. How's that one go again? Ooh, actually, don't even need to do that. So all I need to do right now, this is until later. So we're going to actually say x, and we're just going to use a shorthand for x equals x plus, which is just plus equal. We'll just say mk or mk dot or times player speed. All right, and this is going to be y plus equals mk dot per times p speed. All right, that should be all good and done. Sorry, keep forgetting semicolons. It says there's an error. Oop, that is wrong. All right, so it should clear up. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and run and see what happens. All right, so yep, still able to use WASD. So that's right. Ooh, my left and right are a little bit messed up, but I'll be able to fix that later. All right, can I use left and yep, I can use my directional pad also in the on the bottom of my keyboard. All right, awesome. Now let's actually kind of go over here and see what I did wrong. Oop. My keyboard instance begin step. Oh, that's what I did. It's supposed to be right minus left. All right. Sorry if you guys caught that and I didn't. All right, so that's going to be that one. Now let's actually start programming the gamepad. So since it's super simple to do it on this program, we're going to say horizontal is equal to 0, vertical is equal to 0. We're just making these variables so that way we know exactly what we're going to be using. We want to bring in a pad number. Pad number is going to equal to 0. So what index the computer should be looking for when choosing the gamepad. And I'm just going to go ahead and set some dead zones. So set axis dead zone. I'll set that to 0 underscore 0.15. That's just so that it has some room to just not get called out in. Right, and I don't really need a button threshold for it. buttons usually work pretty good. Okay, let's go ahead and start the step again. All right, so now we're going to very simply write horizontal is equal to GP or game pad axis value. So this is going to be looking at the left. So yeah, so axis left H. And if I'm not exactly sure which one this was supposed to be, I can just click into it and hover, and then click F1. And then if I click F1, I'll get the Game Studio manual to Game Studio 2 manual to come up, and I could look up all the different things I need to know about it. Here's a little diagram I showed you guys earlier. All right. Oop, not my email. Now let's go ahead and go back to GameMaker Studio. So that opens that. So I'll be looking at the horizontal of the left analog stick, and vir is going to equal to gamepad underscore axis value device. This is going to be GP over axis axis L V, right, the vertical. All right. If I wanted to be weird, I could just make this the right one. So you have to use the left and right analog sticks. Not really all that great, but it's a thing you can do. And for oh, actually, we did forget something here. We forgot to tell it exactly which pad number we're going to be doing it. So let's go to pad num. Right there, pad num. All right, and pad num underscore number. All right, so we're going to tell it, okay, look for the device pad number or the input device 0. All right, cool. All right, now, if you were here earlier for the lecture, you would have seen that there was a little problem with the way this thing sees pad numbers. So if I go ahead and create an asynchronous system thing. All right, so I want it to show debug message, and that message is going to be event is equal to, I'm sorry, let me go, actually, yeah, let me go ahead and just come to my little cheat stuff and copy this real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste this in here and just comment this stuff out. So this stuff right here does not matter for us right now. All right. And pad equals pad index. All right. So I'm going to start my game. And we're going to ignore what's going on in the game. All right, ignore this. We're going to start looking down here. So you see, nothing was, it's been undefined. So there has been no pad yet. So I'm going to now connect my gamepad to the, I'm going to connect my gamepad to the computer. It's already 9:30. Uh-oh. Yeah, I'll be finishing this up soon, guys. All right. And I'm going to connect it now. All right, not sure if you heard the little noise, but there we go. We get a little message over here saying that the thing has been connected. Ooh, but the game has to be running for that to happen. All right. Oop, yes. All right. All right, so if we look down here, it says a gamepad was discovered, and the gamepad number is 4. So there was that little issue. Since I'm running on Windows, Windows does not recognize a PS4 controller as being a standard gamepad, so it reserves those strictly for Xbox controllers, essentially. So we're going to go back over here and kind of edit this code to give us this value right here. So we really don't need this switch here. But now let's read into it real quick. So I'm actually going to disconnect my gamepad and connect my mouse because I only have that. Okay. So we're going to open this up on the big screen so that we can see exactly what's going on. All right. So this is something I found online. I could have made this myself, but I think it was a good thing to find it online. So basically, it's going to parse through the async load map to see which event has been triggered, and it's looking for gamepad discovered. So once a gamepad is discovered, we're going to enter this case right here. All right. So when we see gamepad discovered, we're going to associate the gamepad number with whatever index it first found for that gamepad that we're using. So since we found gamepad number 4, index 4, now the gamepad variable we made over here in our create is going to change to 4. So when we initialize this, this should also become a 4. So let's go ahead and try that out. And let me go ahead and reconnect my controller. All right. All right, and let's go ahead and run the game. Ooh, actually, nothing's going to happen right now. Let it do its thing. All right, cool. Now we're going to come over here. Let's actually go back to the player object and just throw it. Since we already inputted the object in here, now we want to just kind of exit this out. Get rid of this. Since now I want a new input, and this input is going to be x is going to be plus equal gp dot horizontal times player speed, and y is going to equal to plus equal gp dot ver times player speed. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and see if this runs. All right, so I'm able to use the left analog stick to control the horizontal and the right to control the vertical. So yeah, now it's a really weird kind of way of programming. Getting this thing to move around. So let's just say we don't want to, we just want to give the player the option to do whatever he wants. So now we want to combine the keyboard state with the horizontal state. Now things get a little bit interesting. By the way, just so that you guys know, whenever you create a variable that has to do with the attributes of the object you're dealing with, it'll turn green. Whenever you make a new variable, it'll be purple. And if you're talking about a certain object, so let's just say gamepad, so you're referencing another one, it'll be red. I forgot to say this earlier, but yeah. Let's go ahead and combine them now. So this is as easy as doing, let's create a new var for horizontal movement. So hmove is going to equal, it's going to equal gp dot horizontal or mk dot horizontal. This is actually not going to work. I can slightly explain why it doesn't work, but is going to equal gp dot ver or mk dot ver. All right. Just gonna make sure that these errors go away. All right. Now x is going to plus equal h move times the player speed. All right. And there we go. I was just like, why isn't it not the temporary ones? It's equal to v move times p speed. All right, so this is awesome. Now let's go ahead and see if this runs. It might, but there is something wrong with it. Oops, did I forget to do a plus equal? Times c. Yep. All right, it's working with right and down. That's funny. Okay. So let's see why that's going on. So right now what this is doing is taking the positive values of these two and checking them only up against each other. But we have the positive values, we have positive and negative values in these. So we need to go ahead and include those negatives. So the way we're going to do that is by creating a new script. Scripts are really awesome to use if you need some certain function to be made. So we're going to create a new script. We're going to call this AVS or max AVS. Yeah, max absolute value. All right, so we're going to be looking for the maximums of the absolute values. So in this case, that's what it'll be. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and just bring this to its own window. So the way functions work in GameMaker Studio is you have to declare them much like you would in another programming language. Let's just say C++, Java, C#. You have to give it variables it's going to be looking for. So object. All right. So we have two objects. That's going to be the mouse and the gamepad. All right, cool. So now we're going to be checking whether or not one is greater than the other. So another reason why this issue occurs is because analog sticks are continuous and keyboards are incremental. So when you give it when you do the check, it's only checking, it's checking constantly, but it's always giving a 1 or a 0 versus analog gives the range of motion of left and right or up and down. So let's go ahead and oh, geez, my talking voice. Sorry, trying to find where I have that function. Ooh, I don't have it. All right, well, this is pretty simple either way. So we're going to be comparing the two variables. So if, let's give these different names so that way we can identify which one's which. So if object 1 and object 2. All right, so if object 1 is, if object 1 is greater than underscore object 2, then we want to return object 1. Okay, else, or if it's not true, we just want to return object 2. Object 2. All right. So now, object 2. Number lock. All right, so this is the little code we're going to use for max abs. So now we're going to go back to the player object. I don't have it up here. Okay, so to the workspace, we're going to double click our player object. Go ahead and just get that situated right here. Oof. That's why I need a mouse. Give me a second. So used to using a mouse. All right, middle button click. Here we go. So over here, instead of just using this raw kind of way of doing it, we're going to use that function to do it. So max underscore abs. We're going to say our first object is going to be the gamepad. Second object is going to be our, our mouse and keyboard. And I will do that for that one. Okay, copy and paste. All right, and change these to the verticals. So ver and ver. All right, so now we get horizontal motion and vertical motion. Let's see if that worked out. All right. Oops, still messing up on the negatives. Uh-oh. Let me see, did I do something wrong? Scripts. Let's see. Gamepad access values. It's weird. Hmm. Hmm. Guess I did this over here. Space speed. So we're just going to get this over here. Speed. Oop, that's speed. And times p speed. Sorry. And we're just going to change these to these over here. Get rid of all of that. But that should not have changed. Did I accidentally make a mistake on the keyboard? Begin step. It's curious. I don't know why it's not working. It's only getting the positives now. And left minus right. Keypad. So it says horizontal is equal to left minus right. Left minus right. Well, this is embarrassing. Should have not been like this. If object 1 is greater than object 2. Oh, here we go. We're going to get the absolute values of these guys. Absolute values of these guys. So we're not looking at their actual inputs because since left and up are going to always be negative, that's why they weren't being read. There we go. All right, there we go. We get our left, right with our directional pads. All that works there. And we're going to check our gamepad real quick. Oop. And we'll see if that works. Oop, that one. Oh, yeah, it works. Awesome. So we were able to fix it up. Now, I'm not sure if you guys want to watch how to do collision detection and what kind of things you could do to make sure that things don't clip into each other. You guys can kind of hang out. I'm going to quickly finish up this presentation, and then I'll go back and do collision detection for anyone that wants to kind of stay and watch that. All right, so these are wonderful resources to use for Game Maker Studio in terms of controller inputs. So this is just different different links to that. So I'm going to quickly go into Unity real quickly. Not really into Unity, but like explaining how you might do this in Unity and what kind of connections they might draw. All right, so in Unity, there is an input system. You need to open up your project, and that's going to go into open up a project, go to the top where it says window, look for package manager, and in the package manager, you're going to search for input system. Then you're going to install it into your project. You're then going to create an impact action asset into your project folder. You just do that by right clicking anywhere on, or no, you just find the little plus sign somewhere. And then you're going to edit the input action asset. And you could give it an action map, actions, and properties. All right, let's look at those real quick. So control schemes, these are going to be, if you want to organize your code, you could divide things up into controller types. So mouse and keyboard, gamepads, other input devices, whatever you guys like. This is good for multi-input type games. So like if you wanted for keyboard accessibility and gamepad accessibility and a stick accessibility, you might want to make different control schemes. For action maps, let's just look at the games Red Dead Redemption and GTA 5. So in Red Dead Redemption, you have player on foot and player on horse, right? So two different completely ways of controlling the character, but they're going to have like a general feel to them, right? And in GTA, we have the player, land vehicle, and air vehicle. Same kind of idea. So they're just different kind of control maps that you're going to be using. Actions. So you want to define movements with a single move set. So let's just say every time I press a certain button, it's going to do something. You'd have to bind that movement to an input. So you just do in a specific way. I can kind of show it, but I can't show how to program the movements in Unity. It is a little bit more difficult, and I personally don't know Unity. And then you could create a 2D vector composite to group up WASD or the error case. So I'll quickly just kind of show that. Just kind of uh, Unity hub. So I'll just quickly make a new project. That way you guys can at least see the fundamentals. Because what I made in GameMaker Studio is going to be essentially the same thing in Unity. It has a whole different way of looking, but it's essentially the same thing. You want to make objects for your control schemes, and then give that control scheme all the programming and stuff like that. But I'll show you how it looks like in Unity. And also, it's probably a little bit easier in Unity because the way they set it up is really nice. We're just going to give Unity a chance to boot up. All right, cool. So I just started a random project. I'll go to the scene. We're in a 3D project, but that doesn't really matter. I'm just going to show kind of how to access the input system because that is really useful. So you're going to go to Package Manager, and over here you'll get this. You're just going to look over here under the Unity repository or registry. Oop, come on, let me look up things. Oh, it was just lagging. Input. Okay, there it is. Then you're going to click Install. It'll kind of, I think it's because I might be streaming that it is taking so long. But yeah, it'll start importing it into the project, and then it'll ask if you want to change your current control scheme to the input system. Just say yes. It makes it a lot easier for you to use. Oh boy. Here we go. And when you do that option, it's going to force you to restart Unity, which I hope doesn't take too long. Oh, there we go. All right. Hold on, it says. All right, I'm actually going to close that off. And I'm going to start kind of just in the background while this takes its time to open up. Start setting up the collision stuff. All right, so in between here, we want to make a new region for collision. So I'm going to do region. You don't really need to do this. It just organizes the program really nicely. And region. Region. And I'm going to call this region collision. All right, so, oh, this has started up again. All right, so it says error loading. That's okay. It's just messing up on me. All right, so now we're going to go to the project, and right here on this plus sign, open up an input actions. All right, and we're going to give it the control name player, just player. All right, if I double click onto it, it'll open this menu. I'm going to lock it up here. And I can make a new control scheme. So I'll call this gamepad. And I'm just going to add a gamepad, standard gamepad. It's just going, if I use standard gamepad, it'll be able to work with Xbox, PlayStation, whatever. So that's great. I like the ability to use everything I want. And I'm going to make another one for a mouse and keyboard. So I'm just going to click MK. And this is going to be for a keyboard and a mouse. The mouse. There we go. We're going to save. And we're going to make a new action map and call it gameplay. So this will be for standard gameplay. If we're in GTA, let's just say this would be when the player is just kind of roaming the streets, wreaking havoc. And we're going to make a move action. You know, we want to move around the world. And if we bind something to here, go ahead and plug in my gamepad to show you a nice little trick. All right, so here we go. So when I click here, now I want to bind movement to the left analog stick. So all I'm going to do is click listen. It's now listening for inputs, and it's not listening. Huh. Well, we'll do Okay, that's weird. Maybe, it was working earlier. All right. Well, regardless. Oh, maybe that's why. So we're going to go, instead of a button type, we're going to value any uh, any control type. We're going to come over here. We're going to listen now, and it's still not working. Okay, whatever. We're going to go to, that's why, of course. We're going to go to the gamepad. Actually, we'll just go ahead and go to all the control schemes. So yeah, tricked myself at my own game. All right, so now when we listen, we're going to be listening for the left stick. Here we go. So now all our movements are based off of this left stick. It has a associated left and an associated right to it. I mean up and down and horizontal. All right, and if I wanted to get it into the keyboard, let's add a 2D vector composite. And now it creates 4 new bindings for me. So it says up, down, left, right. So I'm going to say, well, obviously, I want this to be W, path A. Oh, listen for A. Listen for, oh, sorry, that's supposed to be A. Listen A. This is supposed to be listen S. Yeah, you get the idea. And from here, listen, there we go. And from here, you would create a class, and now you could use this stuff to program a control scheme within an object. How you do that, I'm not really familiar with Unity. I just learned this small section of it so that I'm able to show off to you guys that it is possible here to kind of do the same thing I did on GameMaker Studio in here, but maybe a little bit simpler. All right, so don't really want to keep this stream going on much past 10. I'll probably try to do this as quickly as possible, but All right. So collision detection in Game Maker Studio. Uh, yes. Let's go ahead and say if place underscore meeting. So if we're checking if two things are colliding to each other, we're saying, or we're going to check if something will meet. So we're going to say h plus h move, right? Yeah. So h plus h move, our current y, and our current, and the object will be, we're checking if it will meet with the wall object. Then we got to let it know if that is going to happen. We don't want any type of collision there. So we're going to go ahead and close that off, and we're going to tell it, please stop. So h move will convert itself to 0. It's going to tell it stop moving. You can't move that way if you're going to be colliding. But let's just say we are four pixels away, and that means the player technically can move forward, but if it moved the 5th pixel, it'll be in a collision zone. So that's why we got to make a quick while statement. So while there isn't a collision, so place underscore meeting, this is the not. While there isn't a collision going on, so not place meeting, so there isn't a meeting happening, plus h move y. Oh well. While that is happening, we want this subcode to happen. We just want to increment towards the wall. So we're going to say x plus equals sign h move. So this sign function basically extracts the sign of h move. So if it's moving to the left or the right, it'll give a positive or a negative, or negative or positive respectively. And it'll just say, okay, so +1, -1. So that's what that sign function is doing there. Okay. And now what that's going to do is allow it to creep towards the wall until it either hits it, and this is actually making a collision, so it doesn't have to loop anymore. And then it'll just stay at the move equals 0. All right. So we're going to go ahead and copy this real quick. So copy that, paste that in here. What's missing here? Got an open. Oh, yep. And right here. Same thing happened here. It's kind of weird that this program doesn't auto open and close your parentheses. And then we're going to convert all of this to this over here, plus vmove. So now we're checking for vertical collisions right here. Copy. Paste. Paste. And change that to vmove. All right, now we're just going to make sure vmove, 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 vmove. Okay. And this stuff stays constant down here. Let's go ahead and see if it worked. All right, so there we go. I made contact with that wall right there, but I can't get any closer to it. I made contact with this bottom wall, but it won't let me go any lower. So there we go. So I haven't given myself enough clearance to go through these little hallways, but that's okay. I could change that with the maskings and stuff like that. I mean, with the collision maskings and stuff like that. But there we go. We have collision control also. You see that there is like a little dead zone in between here. So maybe that's why it's not being able to pass through there. Oh well. So thank you for showing up to this workshop. I hope you guys were able to learn something. Here are some of the resources I used for photos and stuff like that. But yeah, thanks for showing up. Hope you guys have a great evening, and good luck to you guys in the jams. Bye. Let me just go ahead and close the screen. Now I have to do it over here. And stream.